My name is Aurora Miller. On the night of my 36th birthday, I sat at the head of a long table in a massive Buckhead mansion. 40 guests were watching me. We were halfway through dessert when my father stood up. He tapped his glass and looked right at me. The room went dead quiet. "Aurora," he said, his voice loud and clear so everyone could hear. "You're not even half the woman your 16-year-old sister is." My mother smirked behind her wine glass. My little sister laughed and adjusted the gold Rolex on her wrist, a watch paid for by my hard work. Every single guest stared at me. They were waiting for the tears. They were waiting for me to run away or crumble, just like I always did when I was a child. But I didn't crumble. I pushed my chair back slowly. The legs scraped loud against the marble floor. I looked my father in the eye and smiled. "If she is so much better," I said calmly, "then let her start paying your salary." "Dad, you're fired." They thought that night would break me. Instead, it was the night I finally broke them. But before I tell you how everything flipped, like and subscribe, drop a comment. Where are you watching from? My name is Aurora Miller. I am 36 years old and I live in Atlanta. I have to go back to the beginning. To understand why I ruined them, you have to understand what they took from me first. It started when I was 18 years old. I was not a popular girl. I didn't go to parties. I didn't have a boyfriend. All I had were my books and a dream. I wanted to be a businesswoman. I wanted to build things. I wanted to look at a skyline and know that I owned a piece of it. My parents, Richard and Alina Miller, didn't care about my grades. They cared about appearances. My father ran a small real estate firm that was doing okay, but he acted like he was a king. My mother spent her days shopping and planning luncheons for ladies who didn't actually like her. I was just the furniture. I was the quiet daughter who cleaned up the kitchen and stayed out of the way. But I had a secret. I had applied to Emory University. It was my dream school. It was expensive, but I had worked harder than anyone else in my high school. I had a 4 GPA. I was president of the debate club. I had done everything right. One Tuesday afternoon, the letter came. I remember the heat of the sun on my back as I walked to the mailbox at the end of our long driveway. The envelope was thick. My heart started hammering against my ribs. I ripped it open right there on the asphalt. "Congratulations." I read the first line and I almost fell over. I had gotten in. But there was another piece of paper behind the acceptance letter. It was about financial aid. I had won the Future Leaders Scholarship. It was a full ride. Tuition, room, board, books, everything was paid for. It was worth over $200,000. I felt like I was floating. For the first time in my life, I felt special. I felt like I had value. I ran back to the house, clutching the papers to my chest. I couldn't wait to show them. I thought, finally, they will be proud of me. I found my father in his study. He was sitting behind his big oak desk, looking at a golf magazine. My mother was on the sofa, filing her nails. "Dad, Mom," I burst in, out of breath. My father frowned. He didn't like loud noises. "Aurora, keep your voice down." "I got in," I said, placing the letter on top of his magazine. "I got into Emory, and look at the second page." He picked up the paper. He read it slowly. My mother didn't even look up. She just blew on her nails. "A full scholarship," my father said. His voice was flat. He didn't smile. "Yes," I said. "It pays for everything. I'm going to study business. I can go to college for free." My father set the paper down. He took off his reading glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. Then he looked at me with cold, dead eyes. "No," he said. I blinked. "What? We are not using this," he said. "Using what?" I asked. I was confused. "It's a scholarship. It's for me. It has my name on it." "It's money," he said. "It is family capital, and we are not wasting it on a liberal arts degree for you." "It's not wasting it," I argued. My voice started to shake. "It's Emory. It's a business degree, and it's free money, Dad. If I don't use it, it disappears." "We have plans, Aurora," my mother said from the sofa. She finally looked at me. Her eyes were like ice. "We are planning to have another child. We are trying, and if we have a son, or a better daughter, they will need resources." I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. "But this is my scholarship," I whispered. "You can't give it to a baby that doesn't exist." "We can decline it," my father said. "We can tell the board that the Miller family does not need charity. It looks better for my image. If we take charity, people will think my business is failing." "It's not charity, it's merit," I yelled. "I earned it." My father stood up. He was a tall man, and he used his height to scare people. He leaned over the desk. "You earn nothing," he spat. You live in my house, you eat my food, you are nothing without us. And you are not going to Emory. You will go to the state college, you will live at home to save money, and you will help your mother around the house. That is final. He picked up the acceptance letter and the scholarship offer, then he ripped them in half. I watched the pieces fall onto the desk. I didn't cry. I wanted to, but I didn't. Something inside me turned hard that day. It was the first crack in the glass. I went to the state college. I didn't live at home, though. I refused. I took out student loans. I signed papers that put me thousands of dollars in debt at 18 years old. I got a job waitressing at a diner on the night shift. For 4 years, I barely slept. I went to class from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. I studied from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. I worked at the diner from 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. I smelled like grease and old coffee. My shoes had holes in them. I ate leftover pancakes for dinner because I couldn't afford groceries. My parents never visited. They never sent a birthday card. They never sent a dime. 2 years later, my sister, Tiffany, was born. I heard about it through a Facebook post. My mother posted a picture of the baby in a pink nursery that was bigger than my entire apartment. The caption read, "Finally, our princess has arrived. The one we waited for." That hurt. It hurt more than the poverty. They had waited for her. They had saved for her. I was just the practice run. I was the mistake they kept around until they got what they really wanted. I graduated top of my class. Summa cum laude. I walked across the stage in a gown I had rented because I couldn't afford to buy it. When they called my name, Aurora Miller, I looked into the crowd. I scanned the rows of parents. I saw smiling fathers holding flowers. I saw mothers crying with joy. My seat was empty. They didn't come. My father had a golf tournament. My mother said Tiffany, who was 2 at the time, had a cold. I took my diploma and walked off the stage alone. I went to the parking lot, sat in my rusted Honda Civic, and stared at the piece of paper. I will show them, I told myself. I will be so big they can't ignore me. I had an idea, a business idea. I had spent my college years studying real estate trends in Atlanta. I saw neighborhoods that were about to explode in value. I saw old warehouses that could be turned into lofts. I had a business plan. It was solid. It was brilliant, but I needed a cosigner. I had debt from school. My credit score was okay, but banks don't lend money to 22-year-olds with no assets. I needed a guarantor. I swallowed my pride. I put on my best suit, a cheap navy blazer I got from a thrift store, and I drove to my parents' house. The house looked different. They had renovated. There was a new fountain in the driveway. A new Mercedes was parked out front. I knocked on the door. The housekeeper answered. She looked at me with pity. "They are in the sunroom, Miss Aurora," she said. I walked in. My father was drinking iced tea. My mother was playing with Tiffany on the floor. Tiffany was surrounded by toys, expensive dolls, electronic gadgets, piles of clothes. "Hello," I said. They looked up. "Oh," my mother said. "It's you, we didn't know you were coming." "I have a proposition," I said. I tried to sound professional. I opened my folder. "I graduated top of my class. I have a business plan. I'm going to start a real estate holding company. I have identified 3 properties in Midtown that are undervalued. If we buy them now, we can flip them in 18 months for a 200% profit." My father took the folder. He flipped through the pages fast. Too fast to actually read them. "And," he asked, "I need a cosigner for the initial loan," I said. "I don't need your money, I just need your signature. I will do all the work. I will pay the loan back. You take 0 risk, and I will give you 10% of the profits just for signing." He laughed. It wasn't a nice laugh, it was a bark. "You," he said, "you want to run a real estate company." "I know the market, Dad. I studied it." "Book smarts are useless," he said. He tossed the folder back at me. The papers slid across the floor. "Real estate is a man's game, Aurora. It's about handshakes and golf and knowing the right people. You are a girl. You don't have the stomach for it." "I worked my way through college," I said, my voice rising. "I have plenty of stomach." "No," he said. "Daughters don't run legacies, they marry men who run legacies. If you want money, find a husband." My mother chimed in. "Look at Tiffany," she cooed. "Tiffany is going to be beautiful. She won't need to work, will you, sweetie?" I looked at the toddler. She was wearing a dress that cost more than my car. She looked at me with blank eyes. "Please," I said, "just a signature, I promise I won't fail." "Get out," my father said. He turned back to his tea. "Stop embarrassing yourself. Go get a job as a secretary. That's what you're good at." I picked up my papers from the floor. I felt the heat rising in my cheeks. It wasn't shame anymore. It was rage, pure white-hot rage. "You're making a mistake," I said quietly. "The only mistake was thinking you could be a businessman," he said. I walked out of that house. I didn't look back. I drove to my apartment. I looked at my bank account. I had negative $23,000 in student loans. I had $400 in cash. I packed 2 suitcases. That was all I had. I drove into the city. I found a for rent sign on a tiny studio apartment in a bad part of town. It was above a noisy bar. The floors were crooked. It smelled like stale beer. I paid the deposit with my last bit of cash. I sat on the floor of that empty room. I had no furniture. I had no bed. I ate an apple for dinner. I looked out the window at the Atlanta skyline. The lights were twinkling in the distance. The big towers where the rich people worked. They stole my scholarship, I thought. They stole my graduation. They stole my chance. But they can't steal my brain. I took a Sharpie and wrote on the wall, right on the peeling paint, Miller Realty Group, and under it I wrote, "Revenue goal, $1 million." I slept on the floor that night, wrapped in my coat. I was cold. I was hungry, I was alone, but I wasn't broken. I woke up the next morning at 5 a.m. I went to the library to use the free internet. I started looking for phone numbers. If they wouldn't give me a seat at the table, I was going to build my own table. And then I was going to buy the building their table sat in. The backstory was over. The rise was about to begin. I started with a phone book and a prepaid cell phone. My office was the corner of my bedroom in that studio apartment. I sat on the floor with my back against the radiator to stay warm. I had a list of property owners in Atlanta who were trying to sell distressed commercial buildings, places nobody wanted, warehouses with broken windows, strip malls with empty parking lots. I called them one by one. "Hello, my name is Aurora Miller. I represent a private investment group. We are interested in your property." I lied. There was no group. It was just me, eating instant noodles and wearing 3 pairs of socks. Most people hung up, some laughed at me. One man told me to go back to playing with dolls, but I didn't stop. I made 100 calls a day, then 200. My throat hurt from talking. My ear hurt from pressing the phone against it. Finally, on the 43rd day, a man named Mr. Henderson stayed on the line. He owned an old auto repair shop in a neighborhood that was just starting to get trendy. He was tired. He wanted to retire to Florida. "Make me an offer," he said. I didn't have money to buy it, but I knew how to structure a deal. I offered him a lease option. I would control the property for 6 months with the option to buy it. I paid him $1,000 for that option, every last cent I had saved from working odd jobs. Now I had control of the building. I didn't own it, but I controlled it. I cleaned it up myself. I swept the glass. I painted over the graffiti. Then, I marketed it to hip coffee shops and art galleries. 2 weeks later, a coffee chain signed a letter of intent. They wanted the space. They were willing to pay 3 times the rent Mr. Henderson had been charging. I took that lease agreement to a bank. Because I had a signed tenant with good credit, the bank gave me the loan to buy the building from Mr. Henderson. I bought it on a Tuesday. I sold it on a Friday to a larger investor for a $60,000 profit. I stared at the check. $60,000. It was more money than I had ever seen. I didn't buy a car. I didn't buy clothes. I put every single penny back into the business. That was the first brick. Over the next 10 years, I didn't rest. I became a ghost. I didn't date. I didn't go on vacations. I worked 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. I learned the city better than the city planners. I knew which streets were getting new pavement. I knew where the new subway stops were going. I bought land before anyone else knew it was valuable. By the time I was 30, Miller Realty Group was a beast. We owned 230 properties. We had office towers, apartment complexes, and high-end retail centers. The market value of my portfolio was over $180 million. I was on the cover of business magazines. The Queen of Midtown, they called me. That's when my parents came back. They smelled the money. It's like sharks sensing blood in the water, but in reverse. They sensed success. My father showed up at my new office one morning. It was a glass tower in the center of the city. I had the whole top floor. He walked in like he owned the place. He was older now, his hair thinner, but he still had that arrogant swagger. "Aurora," he said, looking around at the marble reception desk and the view of the city. Not bad at all." "Hello, Dad," I said. I didn't get up from my desk. "I've been thinking," he said, sitting down without being asked. You've done well, but you're growing too fast. You need experience at the helm. You need a steady hand. I'm doing fine, I said. People are talking, he said. They say you're too young, they say you're overwhelmed. It looks better if you have a chairman, someone with a legacy name, it calms the investors. He wanted a job, he wanted the title. He wanted to be the big man again because his own small firm had stagnated years ago. I looked at him. I hated him. But I was also smart. I knew that in Atlanta, the old boys club was still real. Having my father as a figurehead might actually help me get into certain rooms. It might help me close deals with the older generation who didn't trust young women. Fine, I said. Chairman of the board, non-executive. You get a salary, you get an office, but you make zero decisions. I run the company, I sign the checks, you just shake hands and smile. He smiled, it was a greedy smile. Done. It was the worst mistake of my life, or so I thought. For the next 6 years, my father played the part. He took a massive salary, $400,000 a year. He hired my mother as a design consultant for another $150,000. They did nothing. They used the company credit cards for client dinners that were actually just family meals. They used the company jet for scouting trips that were actually vacations to the Bahamas. And then there was Tiffany. My sister was 16 now. She was a brat. She had never been told no in her life. She drove a Range Rover that my company leased. She went to a private school that cost $50,000 a year, paid for by a scholarship from my company's charitable arm, something my father set up. They were bleeding me, they were parasites, but I let them do it. Why? Because I was still that little girl who wanted them to love me. I thought if I gave them enough money, if I made them look important, they would finally say, "We are proud of you, Aurora." I was pathetic. But I was also careful. Even though I let them play boss, I never gave them actual power. My father was chairman, but the operating agreement stated that the CEO, me, had sole authority over acquisitions and asset management. I started to see how greedy they were becoming. They started asking for more, a bigger bonus, a new house, a boat. I started to get a bad feeling in my stomach, a survival instinct. Quietly, without telling them, I started creating new holding companies. When I bought a new shopping center, I didn't put it under Miller Realty Group. I put it under AM Holdings LLC, or Blue Sky Ventures, or Aurora Trust. My father didn't notice. He never looked at the contracts. He only looked at the profit and loss statements to see if there was enough cash for his bonus. He saw the Miller Realty Group logo on the building and assumed it belonged to the main company. He didn't know that Miller Realty Group was just the property manager. The owner was me, personally. I did this for 3 years. I moved the most valuable assets, the crown jewels of my empire, out from under the entity my father was attached to. I was building a lifeboat while they were drilling holes in the ship. I didn't know how badly I would need that lifeboat until the phone rang late one Tuesday night. It was 11:45 p.m. I was in my condo reviewing lease agreements. My phone buzzed. It was Arthur. He was the family attorney. He had worked for my father for 30 years, but he had also handled some of my corporate filings. He was an old man, nervous and jittery. "Aurora," he whispered. He sounded like he was hiding in a closet. "Arthur, it's late. Is everything okay?" "I shouldn't be calling you," he said. "I could lose my license. Attorney-client privilege. But I can't sleep. I've known you since you were a baby, Aurora. I watched you build this company." My stomach dropped. "What is it, Arthur?" "Your father," he said. "He came in today. With your mother, and they had me draft a new estate plan, a master family trust." "Okay," I said. "That's standard." "No," Arthur said, his voice cracked. "Aurora, you need to hear this. They placed everything into the trust. Their shares of Miller Realty Group, the house, the accounts, the life insurance, everything." "Okay," I repeated. I didn't understand the panic yet. "And they designated the beneficiary," Arthur said. He paused. The silence stretched out heavy and cold. "Who is the beneficiary, Arthur?" "Tiffany," he said. "Tiffany?" I asked. "Well, sure, she's the youngest. But what's my percentage? Is it 50/50? "Aurora," Arthur said softly. "You aren't in it." I froze. The pen I was holding slipped from my fingers and rolled onto the floor. "What do you mean?" "I mean you are not in the document," Arthur said. 0%, you are not a beneficiary. You are not a trustee, you are not even listed as a successor. "There must be a mistake," I said. My voice sounded far away. "Maybe they think I have my own money, so they're leaving the personal assets to her." "No," Arthur said. "It's not just the personal assets. It's the company shares." Your father holds 51% of the voting stock of the main LLC, the shares you gave him 5 years ago to make him chairman. Upon his death or upon a trigger event he set for next month, those shares transfer to Tiffany. Next month? I asked. What happens next month? Tiffany turns 17, Arthur said. He is setting up a transfer. He plans to give her the controlling interest in Miller Realty Group as a birthday gift for her future. He wants to secure her legacy. Her legacy? I whispered. I built it. It's my sweat. It's my blood. He told me, Arthur hesitated. He told me that you are just the workhorse. He said you are good at making money, but Tiffany is the face of the family. He said you will continue to work for her. You will run the company and Tiffany will own it. That is the plan. I felt like I couldn't breathe. They weren't just greedy. They were thieves. They planned to enslave me. They wanted me to keep working 18-hour days, stressing over deals and construction and tenants, so that my bratty 16-year-old sister could own my life's work. I tried to argue with him, Arthur said. I told him it was unconscionable. He told me to shut up and draft the papers. I signed them an hour ago, Aurora. It's done. Send me a copy, I said. I can't. It's confidential. Arthur, I said, my voice changed. It wasn't the voice of a daughter anymore. It was the voice of a CEO who destroyed competitors for breakfast. Send me the damn file, or I will ruin you. A minute later, my email pinged. I opened the PDF. I read every word. It was true. The Zimmerman Miller Family Trust. My mother's maiden name was Zimmerman. Primary beneficiary, Tiffany Miller. Excluded parties. Aurora Miller. There was even a clause. Clause 14 billion. It said, in the event of Richard Miller's incapacitation, voting rights for Miller Realty Group shall be exercised by Alina Miller until Tiffany Miller reaches the age of 21. They erased me. I sat there in the dark. I didn't cry. I didn't throw my laptop across the room. The sadness vanished. The hurt vanished. All that was left was cold, hard calculation. They wanted a war, I would give them a war. But they wouldn't even know they were fighting it until they were already dead. I opened a new folder on my encrypted drive. I named it Endgame. I started typing. I looked at the date. My birthday was in 3 months. They usually threw a big party, not for me but to show off to their friends. They would use my birthday as a networking event. Perfect, I thought. 3 months. That was exactly enough time to dismantle them piece by piece. The next morning, I walked into the office at 7 a.m. sharp. I made a coffee. I stood by the window. My father came in at 10 a.m. He was whistling. He looked happy. He had just signed my death warrant the night before, and he was whistling. Morning, Aurora, he called out as he walked past my glass door. Big lunch today, country club, don't wait up. Have fun, Dad, I said. I smiled. It was the best acting performance of my life. As soon as he left, I went to work. The first step was the audit. I had access to everything. I was the CEO. I called the IT department. I need a full backup of Richard Miller's email and Alina Miller's corporate email, I told the IT director. And I need access to the digital expense logs for the last 5 years. Flag everything that doesn't match a client code. Yes, ma'am, he said. By noon, I had the data. It was worse than I thought. They weren't just spending a lot. They were embezzling. I found invoices for consulting services paid to a shell company in the Cayman Islands. I traced the IP address of the shell company. It matched my father's home computer. He was paying himself fake consulting fees to avoid taxes. I found charges for office renovations that were actually for remodeling their kitchen at home. I found tuition payments for Tiffany labeled as employee training. This was illegal. Highly illegal. This was tax fraud. This was piercing the corporate veil. I printed everything. I organized it into binders. Binder 1, tax evasion. Binder 2, misappropriation of funds. Binder 3, breach of fiduciary duty. Next, I looked at the assets. Because I had been secretly moving new properties into my own holding companies for years, the Miller Realty Group, the company my father thought was so valuable, was actually becoming a shell. The big office tower, owned by AM Holdings. The new retail park, owned by Blue Sky Ventures. But there were still about $50 million in assets inside the main company. I needed to get them out. I called a board meeting. But I didn't invite my father. The bylaws said I could hold an emergency operational meeting with just the operational officers. I proposed a corporate restructuring. I argued that the older properties were liabilities. They needed too much maintenance. We should sell them. Who did we sell them to? I sold them to an anonymous LLC. Who owned that LLC? Me. I bought the assets from my own company at fair market value, but I used the debt against them so no cash actually changed hands. It was a paper transfer. My father signed the quarterly reports without reading them. He saw asset transfer and debt restructuring, and his eyes glazed over. He just signed. Good work, Aurora, he said, signing the paper that stripped him of his last valuable buildings. Keep the paperwork moving. Always, Dad, I said. Then came the sister, Tiffany. I followed her on Instagram. She was private, but I had a fake account. She was posting photos of herself in Paris. Shopping spree, thanks, Daddy. She posted a photo of a diamond necklace. Birthday gift came early. I cross-referenced the dates of the photos with the corporate credit card statement. The flight to Paris, billed to the company as Investor Meeting Europe. The necklace, billed as client gift. I took screenshots, hundreds of them. I printed them out and stapled them to the credit card statements. I was building a bomb. 2 weeks before my birthday, I was ready. I sat in my apartment with the boxes of evidence. I had enough to send my parents to federal prison for 10 years. I had enough to leave them homeless. I picked up the phone and called the IRS. I would like to file a whistleblower complaint, I said. I have documentation of tax fraud exceeding $10 million. They listened. They were very interested. We will need to conduct a raid, the agent said. When is the best time to catch the subjects with the records? Not yet, I said. Wait 3 weeks, I'll give you the signal. I want you to freeze the accounts on the morning of November 12th. November 12th. My birthday. Then I called the event planner. I want to book the grand ballroom at the St. Regis, I said. For my birthday party. Oh, wonderful, she said. What kind of theme? Truth, I said. The theme is the truth. I don't understand, she said. Just set it up, I said. And I need a projector. A very large, very bright projector. Connect it to the main chandelier system. I want everyone to see it. I invited everyone, my parents' friends, the business partners, the bankers, the people my father tried to impress. My father was delighted. A big party, he said. Good idea, Aurora, we can announce the new quarter results. I'll make a toast. Yes, Dad, I said. You will definitely want to make a toast. The trap was set. I walked into the office on the final day before the party. I looked at my father sitting in his chair, feet up on the desk, laughing on the phone. He had no idea that he was already a poor man. He had no idea that the chair he was sitting in belonged to me. He had no idea that the IRS agents were printing subpoenas with his name on them. I almost felt bad for him. Almost. Then I remembered the scholarship letter ripping in half. I remembered the empty chair at my graduation. I remembered the trust document that gave my life to a 16-year-old. I walked past his door. See you at the party, I whispered. The venue was the St. Regis in Buckhead. It was the same ballroom my father had rented for his 50th birthday 10 years ago. He loved that room. It had gold curtains, crystal chandeliers that cost more than a house, and marble floors that echoed when you walked on them. I booked it for a Tuesday night. November 12th, my 36th birthday. I arrived 3 hours early. The room was empty except for the catering staff setting up round tables with white linens. The air smelled like fresh lilies and expensive perfume. I stood in the center of the dance floor. I looked up at the main chandelier. It was massive, dripping with crystals. Is it ready? I asked. A technician climbed down from a ladder in the corner. He was a young guy wearing a black hoodie. He didn't know the drama. He just knew I paid him triple his normal rate. Yes, Miss Miller, he said. The projector is mounted inside the fixture. You can't see it from the floor, it's wireless. I connected it to the tablet on your podium. One tap, and it overrides the house lights and projects onto the main wall. It's cinema quality. Good, I said. And the sound? Wired into the main speakers, it will be loud. Perfect. I went to the dressing room to get ready. Usually, for these family events, I wore beige or navy blue. I tried to blend in. I tried to look professional and harmless. Not tonight. Tonight, I put on a dress I had bought in secret. It was red, deep blood red. It was tailored to fit me perfectly. It was bold. It was a dress that said, "Look at me." I put on my heels. I put on my diamond earrings, the ones I bought for myself. I looked in the mirror. The woman staring back at me didn't look like the scared girl who cleaned up the kitchen. She didn't look like the tired student eating noodles. She looked like a predator. Happy birthday, Aurora, I whispered to my reflection. At 6:30 p.m., the guests started to arrive. I stood by the entrance, greeting them. First came the bankers, men in gray suits who had denied my first loans but now begged to handle my accounts. They shook my hand with sweaty palms. "Aurora, you look stunning," Mr. Sterling said. He was the VP of the bank holding my parents' mortgage. "Business is good. Business is excellent, Mr. Sterling," I said, smiling. "Enjoy the wine, it's an interesting vintage." Then came my parents' friends, the country club crowd. Women with tight faces and too much jewelry, they looked me up and down, judging my dress. "Oh, Aurora," Mrs. Gable said, "that color is very bright." "It's a celebration," I said. Then my parents arrived. They made an entrance. They always did. My father walked in first, chest puffed out. He was wearing a tuxedo. My mother was trailing behind him in a silver gown, waving to people like she was the Queen of England. And Tiffany, my sister, was 16. She was wearing a white dress that looked like something a bride would wear. She was texting on her phone as she walked in. She didn't even look up. "Aurora," my father boomed. He hugged me. It was a fake hug. He patted my back twice hard. "Happy birthday, kiddo, nice party, expensive." "I spared no expense, Dad," I said. "Good, good, shows confidence," he said. He looked around the room. "I see you invited the board members. Smart. We can talk to them about the new acquisition later." "We certainly will," I said. My mother kissed the air next to my cheek. "You look tired, Aurora. Are you sleeping? You have bags under your eyes." "I've been working late, Mom." "Planning this?" Tiffany looked up from her phone. She looked me up and down. "Nice dress," she said. She smirked. "For an old lady." I smiled at her. A genuine smile. Because I knew that in about 2 hours, that phone in her hand would be turned off by the service provider because the bill wasn't paid. "Go find your seat, Tiffany," I said. "You're at the head table." I had arranged the seating chart very carefully. The head table was long and rectangular, facing the rest of the room. My father sat in the center, my mother on his left. Tiffany on her left. I sat on my father's right, but I also invited some other people. People who didn't fit in. At a table right in the front, near the screen, I placed Maria. She was our housekeeper for 20 years. She was the one who actually raised me while my mother was at luncheons. My parents had fired her last year because she was getting too old. I hired her back personally. My father saw her. He frowned. "What is the maid doing here?" he whispered to me. "I invited her," I said. "She's family," he scoffed. "She's help. It looks bad, Aurora." "Just drink your champagne, Dad." I also invited Arthur, the attorney. He looked sick. He was sweating. He kept wiping his forehead with a handkerchief. He knew what was in the trust. He knew he had betrayed me. He was terrified to look at me. At 7:30 p.m. dinner was served. Lobster bisque, filet mignon. The best wine on the menu. I watched my parents eat. They ate greedily. My father laughed loudly at his own jokes. My mother gossiped about the other women in the room. Tiffany complained that the Wi-Fi was slow. They were so comfortable. They thought they had won. They thought I was their golden goose, laying eggs for them forever. My father leaned over to me during the main course. "I need you to sign some checks tomorrow," he said. "Tiffany wants a new car for her 17th birthday, a Porsche." "A Porsche?" I asked. "She just got the Range Rover." "She crashed it," he said, waving his hand like it didn't matter. "Minor dent, but she wants something sporty. Put it on the company account. Write it off as a vehicle for the junior executive program." "We don't have a junior executive program, Dad." "We do now," he winked. "Just sign it." I gripped my fork. The metal dug into my skin. "I'll take care of it," I said. "That's my girl," he said. "You're a good worker, Aurora, reliable." Reliable, that was the word, not smart, not brilliant, not loved. Reliable, like a tractor. Like a mule, the waiter cleared the plates. It was time for dessert. A massive cake was wheeled out. It had 36 candles. The room sang happy birthday. I blew out the candles. I made a wish. I wished for justice. Then the music died down. The light stayed dim. My father stood up. He grabbed a spoon and tapped his champagne glass. Ding, ding, ding. The room went silent. Everyone turned to look at him. He loved this. He loved the attention. "Friends, family, colleagues," he began. His voice was booming. "We are here to celebrate my daughter, Aurora." There was polite applause. "Aurora has always been hardworking," he said. "She gets that from me." Laughter. "But you know," he continued, his face changing. He looked down at me. He had had too much wine. His filter was gone. "I was talking to my wife earlier, and we were looking at Aurora and then looking at our beautiful Tiffany." He gestured to Tiffany. She waved her hand, bored. "And I have to be honest," my father said. "Aurora, you've built a nice little business. You manage things well, but you're 36, no husband, no kids, all work. The room got uncomfortable. People shifted in their chairs. Tiffany, though, he said, beaming at the teenager. She has the spark, she has the charisma. You know, Aurora, sometimes I look at you and I think, you're not even half the woman your sister is. My mother smirked behind her glass. Tiffany laughed. Duh, Dad, my father chuckled. It's true, but hey, someone has to do the paperwork, right? So let's raise a glass to Aurora. The best secretary I ever hired. He raised his glass. To Aurora, a few people mumbled, looking embarrassed. My father looked down at me, grinning. He expected me to smile. He expected me to take the insult, swallow it, and say thank you, just like I had for 36 years. I didn't smile. I stood up. I smoothed the front of my red dress. I picked up my clutch. I pulled out a small remote control. Thank you, Dad, I said. My voice was steady. It was amplified by the microphone on the table. Sit down, Aurora, he whispered. Don't make a scene. Oh, I'm not making a scene, I said into the mic. I'm making a presentation. I walked to the podium in the center of the stage. The spotlight hit me. I felt the heat of it. You said I'm a good secretary, I said to the room. You said I'm good at paperwork. You're right. I am very, very good at paperwork. I looked at Arthur, the attorney. He put his head in his hands. And because I'm so good at paperwork, I said, I decided to share some of it with you tonight. Since we are all family here. I pressed the button on the remote. The huge projector in the ceiling clicked on. A beam of light cut through the dark room. On the massive wall behind the head table, an image appeared. It was 10 feet tall. It was a document. The Zimmerman Miller Family Trust. Primary beneficiary, Tiffany Miller. Excluded parties, Aurora Miller. The room gasped. My father froze. His glass stopped halfway to his mouth. This, I said, pointing to the screen, is the document my parents signed 3 months ago. It transfers the company I built, Miller Realty Group, to my 16-year-old sister. My mother stood up. Aurora, turn that off. This is private. It's not private anymore, I said. It's public record. I filed it with the court this morning as evidence. Evidence, my father shouted. Evidence of what? I clicked the button again. Slide 2, a split screen. On the left, a photo from Tiffany's Instagram showing her holding a designer bag in Paris. On the right, the corporate credit card statement. Expense, $12,000. Labeled, office supplies. This is theft, I said. I clicked again. Slide 3, a screenshot of the consulting fees paid to the Cayman Islands shell company. And next to it, the IP address trace leading to my father's home computer. Total embezzled, $4.2 million. This, I said, my voice cold as ice, is tax fraud. My father dropped his glass. It shattered on the marble floor. The sound was like a gunshot. Security, he screamed. Get her off the stage. She's crazy. 2 security guards stepped forward, but they didn't move toward me. They moved toward the doors. They blocked the exit. I had hired them. I'm not done, I said. I clicked the remote one last time. Slide 4. This was the complex one. It was an organizational chart. At the top, it showed a company called AM Holdings. Below it, it showed the ownership of every single building, every mall, every tower. They were all owned by AM Holdings. And underneath AM Holdings, it said, sole owner, Aurora Miller. On the other side of the chart, it showed Miller Realty Group, the company my father thought he controlled. Underneath it, the list of assets was empty. Assets, $0. Liabilities, $11.4 million, IRS liens. You see, Dad, I said. You fired me tonight. You said I wasn't half the woman Tiffany is. You said I should pay her salary. I looked at Tiffany. She looked terrified. She was clutching her Rolex. Well, I said, the company you are inheriting, Tiffany, it's empty. It owns nothing. It only owns debt. And the IRS is freezing its accounts tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. I looked back at my father. He was purple. He looked like he was having a heart attack. You stole my company, he roared. He lunged at me. He tried to climb over the table. He knocked over the wine bottles. But the security guards were there instantly. They grabbed his arms. I didn't steal it, I said calmly. I built it, and I moved it. I left you exactly what you contributed, nothing. I walked over to him. He was struggling against the guards, panting, sweating. You're fired, Dad, I said. I turned to the guests. They were silent, wide-eyed. Thank you all for coming, I said. Please finish the cake, I paid for it. I dropped the mic on the podium. I walked out of the ballroom. My heels clicked on the marble. I didn't look back. I heard my mother screaming my name. I heard my sister crying. I walked out the front doors of the St. Regis. The valet was waiting with my car. The night air was cold. It felt clean. I got in my car and drove away. The setup and the exposure were complete. Now they would fall. I didn't go home that night. I drove to my new apartment. I hadn't told anyone about it. It was a penthouse in Midtown. It had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the entire city. I stood there in the dark, watching the cars move like little red and white blood cells through the veins of Atlanta. My phone was blowing up. 50 calls. 100 texts. My mother. My father, Tiffany, Arthur. I turned the phone off. I poured myself a glass of water and sat on my white sofa. The silence was beautiful. The next morning, the war really started, but I didn't have to fight it. The government fought it for me. At 9 a.m., the IRS agents executed the raid on my parents' house. I wasn't there, but my neighbor texted me. She said 3 black SUVs pulled up. Agents in windbreakers with IRS CID on the back swarmed the property. They carried out boxes of files. They carried out computers. They seized the Mercedes. They seized the Range Rover. My father tried to fight them. He ended up in handcuffs on his own front lawn, screaming about his rights. The neighbors filmed it. It was on the local news by noon. Prominent real estate developer Richard Miller detained in fraud probe. I watched it on the TV in my office. I took a sip of coffee. Sad, I said to myself. By the end of the week, the banks moved in. Because Miller Realty Group had defaulted on its loans, since I stopped transferring money to cover them, the banks called in the personal guarantees. My parents had signed personal guarantees on everything. They thought the company money would always be there to protect them. It wasn't. The bank froze their personal checking accounts. They froze their savings. They put a lien on the Buckhead mansion. My mother tried to use her credit card at the grocery store. It was declined. She called me from the parking lot. Aurora, she screamed into the voicemail. They cut off the cards. I can't buy food. Fix this. Fix this right now. I deleted the message. 2 weeks later, the auction signs went up. The mansion was foreclosed. They had 30 days to vacate. I heard from Maria, the housekeeper, that the scene inside the house was a nightmare. My parents were screaming at each other all day. My father blamed my mother for spending too much. My mother blamed my father for being stupid. Tiffany just cried because she couldn't go to her friends' parties anymore. Tiffany was expelled from her private school. The tuition check had bounced, and when the headmaster looked into the family's situation, they decided the scandal was too much for their reputation. I saw a video on TikTok. Someone had filmed Tiffany sitting on the curb outside the school, waiting for an Uber because her car was gone. The caption said, "Number bankrupt brat." It had 2 million views. Every humiliation they had piled on me, the mocked clothes, the stolen scholarship, the exclusion, was now happening to them 10 times worse. And I didn't lift a finger. I just continued to run AM Holdings. My business was booming. My tenants were happy. My investors were thrilled because I had cut the dead weight, my family, from the payroll. 1 month later, they were evicted. They moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in a rundown complex near the airport. It had beige carpets that smelled like cigarettes. There was no concierge. There was no pool. My father, who used to wear $5,000 suits, was now taking the bus to meet with his public defender. I went to see them once. Just once. I parked my new car, a sleek black Audi, outside their complex. I didn't go in. I just watched from the street. I saw my mother walking out carrying a bag of laundry. She looked old. Her hair wasn't dyed anymore. The gray roots were showing. She looked tired. I saw my father sitting on the balcony in a plastic chair, smoking a cigarette. He looked small. The arrogance was gone. He was just an old man in a cheap apartment. I thought I would feel guilty. I waited for the guilt to come, but it didn't. All I felt was relief. The cancer was cut out. The wound was cauterized. I started the engine and drove away. 6 months passed. My company, AM Holdings, hit $412 million in assets. I expanded into Charlotte and Nashville. I was featured in Forbes magazine. The headline read, "The woman who built an empire from scratch." They didn't mention my family. I asked them not to. I built a new life, a real life. I started dating a man named David. He was an architect. He was kind. He didn't care about my money. He had his own. He liked me because I was smart and funny and liked to hike on weekends. For the first time in 36 years, I had Sunday dinner with people who actually wanted me there. David, his friends, and me. We cooked pasta. We drank cheap wine. We laughed. Nobody insulted me. Nobody asked for a check. One Tuesday, a letter arrived at my office. It had no return address. The handwriting was shaky. I knew who it was. I opened it. Aurora, I am writing this from the library computer. We don't have internet at the apartment. Your mother is sick. The stress has been hard on her. Tiffany is working at a retail store at the mall. It is humiliating for her. I know we had our differences. I know I was hard on you, but I was trying to toughen you up. I was trying to make you strong. It seems I succeeded. We need help, Aurora. We are drowning. The legal fees are eating us alive. Please, we are family. Blood is thicker than water. I was wrong to overlook you. You are a smart businesswoman. Let's make a deal. If you help us get back on our feet, I will acknowledge you as the CEO publicly. Love, Dad. I stared at the letter. I was trying to toughen you up. Even now, he couldn't admit the truth. He couldn't say I was cruel. He couldn't say I was greedy. He framed his abuse as training, and the offer. I will acknowledge you. He still thought his approval was the currency I needed. He thought I was still desperate for him to say good job. He didn't realize that his approval was worthless currency. It was like Confederate money. It had no value in my world. I didn't feel angry. I just felt finished. I walked over to the shredder in the corner of my office. I fed the letter into the machine, whirr. The paper turned into confetti. I didn't reply. I didn't send money. Some people say you should forgive family no matter what. They say you should turn the other cheek. But those people usually haven't had a knife stuck in their back for 20 years. Closure isn't about getting an apology. It's about realizing you don't need one. I went back to my desk. I had a meeting in 10 minutes. We were closing a deal on a new skyscraper. I was busy, so here I am. I am writing this from my balcony. The wind is cold and clean against my face. The sun is setting over Atlanta, turning the glass buildings into gold. I own that view. Everything they tried to take from me, I built without them. They stole my scholarship. I paid for my own education. They stole my graduation. I celebrated my own success. They stole my trust. I created my own legacy. Everything they used to brag about, the cars, the houses, the status, I surpassed in silence. I learned a hard lesson, but a necessary one. Family isn't the people who share your last name. Sharing DNA doesn't give someone the right to abuse you. It doesn't give them a free pass to drain your soul. Family are the people who help you build the table. They are the ones who cheer when you win, not the ones who wait for you to fail. If you are reading this, and you feel like the black sheep, if you feel like you are invisible in your own house, if you are the one working while everyone else is taking, listen to me. Don't scream. Don't fight. Don't beg for their love. Just build, work in the dark, save your money. Sharpen your mind. Create your own world, brick by brick. And when they finally notice you, when they finally realize that you are the one with the power, it will be too late for them. You don't owe your future to the people who bet against your past. My name is Aurora Miller. And this city, this company, this life, they are mine now.